second book like yesterday, because this is a hidden gem, which is super shocking. And every time a question gets answered, you get more questions. Hi everyone, my name's Ebani. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about my top 10 favorite books of 2021. To start off this list, I'm actually going to do an honorable mention, and it is absolutely one of my favorite books of all time, and it probably would be on this list if I had read it for the first time this year, but it was a reread in 2021, so I didn't include any rereads when I compiled this list. But mostly I just want to talk about it because I want to show you what it looks like, because I wasn't able to show you in my December wrap-up because I didn't have it with me. But that is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I wanted to show you what it looks like because this is a copy that I have been annotating for my friend Lexi for her birthday. Like, as a birthday gift, we annotate books for each other. I have been working on it all year. It took me from like April to December to do it, but I did it and I finished it, and I am just so happy with how it looks. Look at all the little flags, and all the flags mean different things as well. And then on the inside, there's like notes, and like I underline things in specific colors, and the colors mean specific things, and I am just in love with it. I think it is like my magnum opus. It's just so pretty. I love it. So yeah, this is like an honorable mention on this list. I think reading it the second time, I actually enjoyed it more than when I read it the first time. So that's awesome. I need the second book like yesterday. I'm obsessed with this book series. I have all the emotions, and I have like no words to explain them. But basically, if you don't know what Ninth House is about, it follows a character named Alex Stern who gets recruited to go to Yale University, even though she has like somewhat of a checkered past, because she can see ghosts, or they call them greys in this book. Yale has all of these like secret societies within it, and there's like the House of the Levy, and there's, you know, people who like make sure the societies are like staying in check. So Alex gets recruited to come to Yale because she can see ghosts, and she is becoming the House of the Levy's new Dante. There's also like a murder mystery going on because like a girl named Tara Hutchins was murdered. I love this book so much. There's magic, there's necromancy, there's prognostications, there's body horror, there's ghosts. It's a lot. I absolutely love it. It's so perfect for like Halloween time. It's super dark. It has all the dark vibes. But trigger warning, there are a lot of triggering things in this book, so definitely look those up beforehand. Specifically off the top of my head, I can think of sexual assault and drugs and death and body horror and gore. Definitely look those up beforehand, but I love this book and I'm excited for Lexi to read it. So now getting into my actual like top 10 books of the year. So I'm going from like least favorite to most favorite, so the number one book is going to be like my absolute favorite book of the year. So at number 10 is Firsts by Laurie Elizabeth Flynn. So I read this book for a vlog series I did kind of over the summer, which I will link so you can check that out if you would like. But basically I had a bunch of books on my like physical TBR that I had never really heard of and I didn't know much about, and I wanted to like get through them as quickly as possible, just so I am clearing up space on my physical TBR for all of the new books I've been getting from the store. By the way, if you didn't know, this cart right here is my physical TBR. Like I haven't read these ones, and I have read the ones on the shelf. So it's kind of like a visual representation of where I'm at in my physical TBR. But anyway, so I was trying to get through all of these books that I didn't know much about, wasn't super interested in, but I had them, so I wanted to at least give them a shot. So I think I read like 13 or 14 books because it was a two-part vlog because it ended up being so long and like I read so many books for it. And the way I did the vlog was I would read 50 pages of the book, and if I wasn't vibing with it, I would DNF it. Or if I was kind of vibing with it, I would maybe give it like another 50 pages and then reevaluate kind of thing. But this was one of the books I read for that vlog, and this is the reason why I wanted to do, like why I didn't want to just get rid of all of the books without at least giving them a shot. Because this is a hidden gem. Had never heard anything about this book. I think I got it from a library sale. I will say this is the only book from that vlog that was like actually worth reading, but I think it makes it totally worthwhile because I was able to, you know, find a book that I actually really enjoyed. So this is a book that follows a character named Mercedes, who has an interesting hobby. It sounds so bad, but she sleeps with guys who are about to have like their first time with like their current girlfriend. So like basically she sleeps with virgins. And the reason she does this is so that the first time for like both the guy and the girl in that relationship is like better. Like it works out all the kinks for like so the guys know what to do when they go to have their first time with their girlfriend. So she kind of feels like she's like doing a service almost, like she feels like she's doing a good thing so that the girls that these guys are dating have a good first time. I feel like her intentions are a little misguided, but she does have good intentions. And so she makes this like list of like the guys she sleeps with, and she like writes down like how it was and different things like that. And then one day her list gets like sent out to the whole school, which you know will cause a lot of gossip and drama. I would have given this book 5 stars. I read it physically, which I don't read a lot of physical books. I read mostly audiobooks, and I read it in like 2 or 3 sittings. So like you know, when I can read a book that quickly physically, you know it's gonna be a good one for me. There was like this plot line of this new girl moving into the school, and she kind of becomes friends with Mercedes, but there's kind of like some sapphic like relationship tones that are like thrown in there. Like it was kind of like hinting at like a relationship between the new girl and Mercedes, and I was so down for that. Like I was waiting for it to happen, to be honest. It kept hinting at it, so I'm like, oh, it's gotta happen, and then it never did. Like it never paid off, and I felt kind of like cheated by that. Like it kept promising this sapphic romance, and then it didn't pay off for it. That was the only reason I gave it 4 stars and not 5, because it didn't pay off with the sapphic romance. If it had, it would definitely be a 5-star book. But nevertheless, even though it was only 4 stars, it still makes it to this list because of all the 4-star books I read this year, which was a lot, it stood out the most to me. Both in terms of it surprised me so much with how good it was, and also it was just actually really enjoyable. Okay, number 9 on this list is Gallant by V.E. Schwab. So this I read as an ARC actually. It doesn't come out until I think it's March 1st is when it comes out. But I read it as an ARC because my good friend Jessica from the store that I work at received an ARC, and she lent it to me because she's the best. So this is V.E. Schwab's newest book. It's a YA book about this girl named Olivia, I think her name is. And Olivia goes to this like orphanage for girls kind of thing. Like that's where the book starts out. And Olivia is mute, so she only signs in ASL, which I thought was a really awesome representation, like something I had never seen before. I've never seen a character who signs ASL, let alone it being the main character who signs ASL. So I really appreciated that representation. But Olivia starts out at this orphanage, and then she gets a letter from her uncle who says that she has a family and invites her to their manor, which is called Gallant. And so Olivia goes to Gallant, and there's a lot of secrets and mystery about Gallant and the remaining members of her family. I really enjoyed this book. It was a lot of fun, and if I had like a physical copy I would show you, but there's a lot of like both journal entries and illustrations in this book, which I thought was like even like enhanced the reading experience even more. I really enjoyed looking at all the illustrations. I ended up giving it 4 stars because I felt like there were a couple of things that it could have done a little bit better, and to be fair, I did read an ARC, so maybe they make changes for like the final release of it. And I definitely want to reread it when it comes out again. I'll probably read it on audio. But the things that kind of bothered me were the part of her living in an orphanage. Like when you get to Gallant and when things happen in Gallant, that part kind of feels like unnecessary because the meat of the story happens in Gallant. So I don't know, I just felt like it took a long time for her to like leave the orphanage and get to Gallant and for the plot to like really kick in. So that was one thing I wish would have done a little bit better. And then also there were some things about the main plot of the story, and I don't want to say anything because I don't want to spoil it, that I wish had either been like dug into more or how we had like more answers for. I don't think that this is a series. I'm pretty sure it's a standalone, but I think it definitely could be a series. Like there's a lot of like meat and potential that I feel like could really be dug into more. Either way, I still loved it, and I'm very excited for it to come out, and I hope you all are too. I hope you all put it on your TBR. It's so good. I love V.E. Schwab, as you know. Okay, now all the rest of the books on this list are 5-star books that I read this year. Those last 2 were 4-star books. Everything else is a 5-star. So basically it came down to figuring out which of the 5-star books I liked the most. Okay, so number 8 is Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult. This book is about a black woman who is I think she's a pediatric nurse at a hospital, and this white, like, racist couple has a baby, and the nurse is like just doing her job and taking care of the baby, and the dad gets really upset that this black nurse is handling their baby, and so she was told by her superiors that she's not allowed to like touch that baby or do anything, which is totally racist and awful and like ugh. But that, like, she was the only black nurse in the ward, and so she kind of just let it go. She was like, okay, I'll just go about my job and I'll just forget, you know, whatever. But then one night, their hospital was very small, so they were kind of short-staffed. I think there was a big accident or something that required almost all of the staff to be helping out with all like the emergencies and like tending to people who needed care for that. And so the main character was put in charge of watching all the babies in the pediatric ward. While she's watching them, like, the baby that she was told she was not allowed to take care of is there, and she notices that that baby isn't breathing. And so she's like conflicted of like, do I do what I know I can do and help try to like keep this baby alive because it's not breathing and it is going to die? But then if she does that, then she has to go against her manager and the parents' wishes. Like, she wasn't supposed to take care of this baby at all, but she's kind of just stuck in this situation, and she like doesn't know what to do. So that's all I'm going to say about that book, because I feel like saying too much more would spoil things. I really enjoyed this book. It has some really good conversations about racial injustice and racism. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was an important read. Okay, number 7 is Game Changer by Neil Shusterman. So this book I think came out at the beginning of 2021, and at first I wasn't like super interested in it because it didn't sound like something I would typically like, but I thought I would give it a shot, and boy, was I wrong. I was super surprised. So the book follows the main character, who he is a football player, and every time he gets like tackled in football and he gets a concussion, he is sent to a alternate dimension parallel universe, which is such a wild concept. And like at first it's like little things that have changed that you wouldn't really notice. Like the first thing I think that changes is that the stoplights turn from red to blue. Obviously that doesn't change much, but then like the next time he gets a concussion, like even bigger things change, and it just like escalates from there. I really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed all of the like alternate dimensions, and I also enjoyed like how it's such an interesting concept. Neil Shusterman always writes really interesting concepts. I loved the execution of it. I thought it was super, super awesome. I highly recommend. I absolutely loved it. Number 6 on my list is Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs by Caitlin Doughty. This is actually a nonfiction book, which is super shocking for me because I don't read a lot of nonfiction. But I thought, like, I saw this book at the bookstore that I work at, and I thought that, one, the cover was really crazy, and like the title is like, whoa, like what is that title even, you know? Definitely an eye catcher. And then I read like the first page or so, like I was browsing it a little bit while I was at the store, and I thought it sounded really interesting, so I decided to give it a try. So I listened to the audiobook for it, and it was so good. It's a nonfiction book about like dead bodies and like what happens like when you die, how cremation works, and like all these things. Basically like questions about what happens to dead bodies. And the author of this book is actually a mortician, so she like specializes in all of these things. So it's basically just like questions that people have for her about dead bodies. And she is really witty. She has a great sense of humor, which I think is a nice way to tell something that's about something so kind of dark. Thinking about like dead people and dead bodies can be kind of like creepy. The way that she answers the questions with humor kind of like makes it lightens the mood a little bit. I thought it was really, really interesting. I learned a lot, and also of course I laughed a lot too. It was super great. I definitely will read more books by Caitlin Doughty in the future. Now we're in the top 5, and this was so hard. Basically numbers 2 through 5, like 5432. Those 4 books, I had such a hard time figuring out what order to put them in because I loved all of them so much. I knew what my number 1 book was, but the top 5 was really difficult. Number 5 on this list is Verity by Colleen Hoover. So I read this book in December. It was one of the last books I read of the year, and I did talk about it in my December wrap-up if you would like to check that out. Oh, this book is a wild ride. It's like a thrillery adult romance. It's very, very R-rated, steamy scenes. So definitely like keep in mind it's like an 18+ book, but it is also like super thrillery and creepy and awesome, and oh my gosh, it was so good. It had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. The main character, I believe her name is Loanne, is a writer, but she's kind of like not well known, and one day she gets offered the opportunity to be a ghostwriter for a very, very famous author named Verity Crawford. Verity specializes in books that are from the villain's perspective, which is like why she like blew up so much and why her series is like so popular. So Loanne has to decide whether or not to take this ghostwriting opportunity with Verity, but she decides to do it. So then she moves in to Verity's house where Verity's husband and her son still live, and the reason why that Verity cannot write her books anymore is because she was in a very bad car accident, and she can't move on her own, she can't talk, she can't eat, she can't really do anything. She has to have like a full-time nurse, so she obviously cannot write. So that's why her publishing company hired the ghostwriter. Loanne's job at the moment is to like dig through all of Verity's like files and like really get to know Verity and her characters and the best way to replicate Verity's writing style. As she is like going through Verity's stuff, she finds Verity's like unfinished, unpublished like autobiography of sorts, and so she's like, well, what better way to get to know Verity than by reading her own autobiography? So she starts reading it, and it is very dark. I'm not gonna say anything else past that because honestly I've probably said too much about what you need to know about it, because I knew nothing going into this book. I just knew it was dark and I was very excited. Definitely look up trigger warnings beforehand. It was so good. I absolutely loved it. Number 4 on my list is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. This book is about a girl, her name is April May, and I hate that. Like, I hate that name. Hank Green, why did you do that? April lives in New York, and one day she's just like going about her day. It's kind of like, it's in the middle of the night, it's like 2 a.m. or something, and she's just, you know, walking down the street of New York, and she stumbles across this like statue of like a man-ish thing. And she was like, oh, this is kind of funny looking. So she calls one of her friends who like loves filming things and like YouTube and all that jazz, and she says like, hey, come down here. And they film like a fake interview with the statue, and they name the statue Carl. That video that they make actually goes viral, and it turns out that Carls just like that one have popped up all over the world just seemingly overnight. Nobody saw them go up, they just appeared. And so not only does April and her friend become pretty famous because they went viral, there's some like discussions of fame in there, but also there's like this impending mystery of like, what are the Carls, why are they here, what's happening? It is so wild. Oh my gosh, like I don't have like words to explain what this book did to me, but I could not put it down. It was so interesting. It like kept you guessing, but in a different way than like Verity did. You would find out a clue to one thing and you would have like even more questions. Like, it was insane. Yeah, but I really enjoyed this one. Unfortunately, the sequel I didn't enjoy quite as much. I still liked it, but this one was the better of the two. I don't have any other words. It's so good. Number 3 is All This Time by Rachel Lippincott and Mickey Daughtry. These are 2 of the authors who wrote 5 Feet Apart, which if you know 5 Feet Apart, if you've seen / read that, you know it's sad. And I know it's sad. I cried so much when I read and watched 5 Feet Apart. This book is no different. It made me sob. I want to say this was like one of the only books that made me cry this year, and if you know me, I love a good book that makes me cry. It's like one of my absolute favorite things when a book can make me cry. But basically this book follows Kyle, the main character, and he has a girlfriend, his life is great, all is well, but then one day him and his girlfriend get into a car accident and his girlfriend dies. And so he's trying to cope with the loss of his girlfriend. And so like this book, it's one of the books you kind of have to just read. Like, if I say any more than that, it'll just give too much away. But this book, it just throws like one thing at you after another, and it's insane, and like you're like, what's happening? Oh my goodness, it was so good. And also, can we talk about how beautiful the cover is, and just all of it. And like, I also have 5 Feet Apart, and it like matches like the two, and like the covers are similar. Like, number 2 on this list is Where the Forest Meets the Stars by Glendy Vanderross. So, like I said earlier when I was talking about Ninth House, my friend Lexi and I annotate books for each other, and we give them to each other. Lexi annotated this one for me for my birthday in 2020. It was my 2020 birthday, but I didn't get to it until the beginning of 2021. This book is about a woman named Joanne who studies birds, and specifically she studies indigo buntings. And so I really liked that aspect because I got to know so much about studying birds and indigo buntings, and I believe that the author herself also studies birds, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, she did study birds. Okay, so yeah, obviously it's like her real information just employed into the book, which I really enjoyed. I'd never read a character who studied birds. Like, it was so cool. And her studying birds was like a big part of the book. Anyway, let me finish telling you what the plot is. So basically, she studies birds, and she's like doing field research over the summer, and one day this little girl, like no more than like 7 or 8 years old, I think her name is Ursa, wanders up to Joanna's trailer house that she's renting and tells her that she's an alien from outer space, and she was sent to Earth to discover 5 miracles. The one thing that I loved about this book was I never knew from one moment to the next whether or not Ursa was like actually an alien and it was like a sci-fi thing, or if, you know, she was actually just a little girl and there was more to the little girl's story. Like, I never knew, like, until the very end, which it was, and you kind of just like go along with it. It was so good. It was something that I never would have thought of picking up, I don't think. And actually the back of it is blurbed by Taylor Jenkins Reid as well, so like, you know, it's good. I put this one at number 2 because not only was the book like super good, like I said, but also it's like a whole other experience when you're reading something that was annotated for you. So I feel like this book had a little bit of an advantage over other books. I had to put it on number 2 just based on like the experience I had while reading it. But it was so good. I loved it so much that I actually bought Glendy Vanderross' other book. It's right here. It's called The Life Through the Leaves. I haven't read it yet, but I am very excited to get to it when I do. And number 1, my favorite book I read in 2021, should come as no surprise to anybody, is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. As you all know, I love V.E. Schwab. I read this at the beginning of the year, and throughout the entire year, I knew it was my favorite book of the year. I kind of kept waiting to see if I read something else that would top it, but nope, can't top V.E. Schwab. So this book follows 2 characters named Victor and Eli, who are best friends in college, and they're working on their theses, and they decide to do it over EOs, or extraordinary people, basically people with like superpowers. And so they're studying up on what EOs are, how you can become an EO, all the like science behind it, and it's also told in dual timelines. So there's that timeline, and then there's another timeline that's 10 years later, after Victor has just gotten out of jail and he is dead set on killing Eli. And so you're left wondering, like, why does he want to kill this person who was once his best friend? What has happened in all this time? Why was he in jail? What's going on? There's like lots of questions, and every time a question gets answered, you get more questions. This was the best book I read in 2021. It was so good, like indescribably good. And if you haven't read any of these books, I definitely recommend that you check them out because they're all so good. Okay, so those are all of my favorite books of 2021. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you are subscribed down below so you don't miss any future videos from me. I am planning on doing my like top 10 worst books I read in 2021 soon. See, the problem I have is that most of the books that I didn't like that I read for 2021 were books that I had to read for school. So it's not like, you know, it's not like spilling the tea or anything, because like I kind of knew already that I wasn't going to like it when I read it. So let me know like in the comments down below if you would prefer me to just like group all of the books I read for school into like one category and then go into ones that like are more like spilling the tea kind of books. Like, let me know if you guys would prefer that, or if I should just stick to my original list with like half of the list being books that I knew I wasn't gonna like because I had to read them for school. Also, if you want to follow me on social media, all my links are in the description box down below as always. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!
Just